If trustees and staff could take their seats, please. Good evening. Seeing we have quorum in the room, I would like to call our public meeting of the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board for the 17th of December, 2024 to order. Acknowledging that this meeting is taking place on the unceded and unsurrendered ancestral homelands of the Algonquin Nation. I would like to acknowledge and thank the Algonquin Nations for the teachings that they have shared with us over time and for their stewardship of these lands since time immemorial. These things have been a great aid to us, and we need to continue to work to move closer and closer towards true reconciliation with respect for all. In accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, does any board member have an interest to declare? And seeing none, I would now like to move on to the report from Committee of the Whole in camera. Vice Chair Milburn.
The board met this evening in camera and reports and recommends as follows: that staff proceed as directed in board in camera with respect to a human resources matter. That concludes my report.
And do we have a mover for that and the seconder from the in-camera meeting?
Trustee Lyra and I second.
And so it was moved by Trustee Lyra, and you will second it, Trustee Vice Chair Milburn. And so we have had our discussions in our in-camera session. I will ask for the vote to be opened on this particular motion. So we are now voting that staff proceed as directed in board in camera with respect to a human resources matter.
Madam Chair, it's Trustee Blackburn. My e-scribe isn't working and I'm in favor. Oh, wait, now it's working. Sorry.
And we have a result. The motion is carried, 11 in favor, none opposed, 1 abstention. And since that concluded the report from our in-camera session, I will look for a mover for approval of the public agenda. Trustee Presley, seconded by Trustee Kaplan-Mirth. Thank you. Is there any discussion on the agenda? And seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the agenda as presented and opposed, and that motion is carried. And with that, that brings us to the chair's briefing, which is item 8 on the agenda. And I would like to begin my briefing tonight with a request. The Education Foundation of Ottawa supports OCDSB students by reducing barriers and ensuring they have the resources needed to succeed. This holiday season, we are asking for your generous donations to help provide OCDSB students with the essentials they need for a brighter future, whether it's a warm winter coat, a nourishing meal, or the tools they need to thrive in their education. Your support can make a meaningful difference in their lives. Please donate at educationfoundationottawa.ca. Next, I want to share some information about OCDSB's privacy policy. The OCDSB is updating its privacy policy, and we would like your feedback. The policy supports creating a workplace culture that respects privacy, has accountability mechanisms for privacy breaches, and ensures high standards to protect student health information. You can learn more and provide your thoughts at engage.ocdsb.ca. And finally, an important announcement. Starting tomorrow, registration will open for the new school year. This is an important time to welcome new families to join the OCDSB community. Schools will be hosting kindergarten information sessions starting next month in January. This is a great opportunity for families to come and explore the school, meet our wonderful staff members, see what the facilities are like. So I encourage my fellow trustees, parents, caregivers, and community partners to reach out to your networks to share information about registration and kindergarten information nights. Details are on the OCDSB website. Thank you. Are there any questions for the chair? And seeing none, that brings us on to the director's briefing. Mr. Director.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Good evening. As we approach the winter break, I wanted to share a few important reminders. First of all, that the last day of school for elementary and secondary students will be Friday, December 20th. All students will return to class on Monday, January 6, 2025. All elementary school offices, extended day program, and early on child and family care centers will be closed at the end of the day on December 20th and will reopen on January 6th as well. All secondary school offices and administrative buildings will be closed as of 3 p.m. on December 24th and reopen on January 2nd, 2025. Many families within our community will be joyously celebrating various holidays this season. We extend our heartfelt wishes to all participating in the festive occasions during the winter holiday season. I also hope that our students, our staff, and our parents, guardians, and caregivers can take the time to rest and relax, rejuvenate for the upcoming calendar year. We look forward to welcoming each and every one of them back in January 2025. I'll make my way to the podium for the next two brief announcements. Thank you. I wanted to take this opportunity next to share the bittersweet news that this will be the last OCDSB board meeting for General Counsel Richard Sinclair. As many of you are aware, Richard has accepted a position as legal counsel with Carleton University for the start of the new calendar year in January of 2025. Although we will miss him greatly here in the district, his time here over the past dozen or so years, this is an incredible opportunity for an esteemed friend and colleague. We are grateful to Richard for all of his wise counsel, his thoughtful perspective in all of our policies, procedures, practices, and protocols as an organization. And I know that you will all join me in congratulating him on this exciting new venture. Congratulations, Richard. It has truly been a pleasure and a privilege to work alongside you. On behalf of all of us, please accept this brief gift from us. I would also like to take the opportunity this evening to recognize one of our esteemed trustee colleagues in the acknowledgement of her 30 years of public service as a school board trustee. Lynn Scott was first elected to the Carleton Board of Education in 1994. In 1997, she became the first chair of the newly amalgamated Ottawa-Carleton District School Board and has served as vice chair in the school years of 2005, 2006, 2006, 2007, and 2017, 2018, and again as chair in the 2007, 2008, 2008, 2009, as well as the 2018, 2019, and currently 2023 to present school years. In her time as a trustee, Lynn has served or led on all of the board's major committees and has played a significant role in initiatives to improve the programs and services delivered for all students. Trustee Scott's zone represents a very large geographic area encompassing the City of Ottawa's municipal wards of West Carleton March, Stittsville, and Rideau Goulburn. She has been an outstanding advocate in ensuring that rural and suburban students receive similar service levels as those of their urban counterparts. Lynn has a passion for good governance and strategic planning, is a committed lifelong learner, and is always up to date on the latest research in the field of education. She believes strongly in evidence-based decision-making. Her commitment to students and staff and school communities that she serves is evident in everything she does. Over the years, Lynn has given countless hours of her time to mentor newly elected trustees. It is my honor to present Trustee Lynn Scott, chair of our board, with a series of letters of recognition of this milestone, including our mayor and our team of past directors, some of whom are on their way here to celebrate this event. So we may have a pause, at least for a recognition of Chair Scott, and to present her with the Ontario Public School Boards Association President's Award, an award well merited. Please join me in wishing Chair Scott our congratulations. Chair Scott, we have some things for you here, Chair Scott, on behalf of the entire Ottawa-Carleton District School Board. Oh, it's perfect timing. Please come and join us. Former Directors of Education, Michelle Giroux and Barry Hammond, joining us here this evening in absolutely perfect timing for the photo.
Jennifer is right behind us.
Thank you.
And all I can say is that was unexpected. And thank you all very much. Moving on, do we have anything else in the director's report that I didn't know about this evening?
No, that concludes the director's report for this evening. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the director? And I'm not seeing any questions for the director. We have no delegations this evening, which brings us to the confirmation of board minutes from the 26th of November, 2024. Do we have a mover to confirm these minutes? Trustee Kaplan-Murth, seconded by Trustee Forty. Are there any errors or omissions in these minutes? Trustee Nash.
Yes, and through you, Chair. It's, I'd like for the record of the vote to be reviewed for the items related to the code of conduct. I mentioned it to Sue Baker earlier in the evening for it to be verified.
Thank you very much for that. So staff will be able to verify the vote because I think several of us think it was not correctly recorded on all parts. Are there any other errors or omissions? And seeing none, I will call the question then on confirming the minutes, subject to confirmation of the votes with regard to the code of conduct items on the 26th of November. All those in favor and opposed, and that motion is carried. And moving on, is there any business arising from the board minutes of the 26th of November? And seeing none, that brings us to matters for action, and I will call upon Vice Chair Milburn to move receipt of the Committee of the Whole report from the 10th of December, 2024.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And actually, before we do that, can I request a 5-minute recess?
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you.
We will have a 5-minute recess. And so I would like to call our board meeting, please, back to order. And we left off. And by the way, Vice Chair Milburn, there was nothing about calling a recess in the notes.
That is correct, Madam Chair. There was nothing in the notes about calling a recess.
But I would appreciate it if you would please move receipt of the 10th of December, 2024 Committee of the Whole report.
Yes, I will now move receipt of the December 10th, 2024 Committee of the Whole report.
Thank you. And is there a seconder for that? Trustee Presley, are there any errors or omissions in this report? And seeing none, I will call the question on receipt. All those in favor and opposed, and that motion is carried. Moving on then, there were recommendations in this report.
Yes, there were, Madam Chair, on a motion by Trustee Kaplan-Murth, which I will second, that the Facilities Renewal Program and School Condition Improvement Project budget in the amount of 105, in the amount that is on the screen, be approved as detailed in Appendix B of Report 24-124, that staff be authorized to proceed with individual project tenders within the Facilities Renewal Program and School Condition Improvement Project plans, that as FRP/SCI projects are tendered based on bid results or as priorities change, additional projects may be added or removed to suit the availability of the overall budget, and these additional projects will be able to proceed without further approval as long as the overall FRP/SCI budgets are not exceeded, and that the chair of the board and the director of education are authorized to award contracts about $500,000 that are within the overall available uncommitted approved budget.
Thank you. And I ask if this is a consent item. And seeing no objection to having it as a consent item.
Chair? Chair
Yes,
Justine Bell here. I was hoping to be able to discuss this item.
in that case, it will not be a consent item and we will deal with it when we get to the appropriate spot, which would be 13.3. So with that, that concluded your report, Vice Chair Milburn.
For this item, yes, ma'am.
And there were other items in that report, yes?
Sorry, my speaking notes are a little bit out of order. That is my bad. On a motion by trustee Lyra, which I will second, that Appendix A to Report 24-131 be approved as the 2023 to 2024 Annual Report on Internal Audit Activity.
And I will ask again if this is a consent item. And I'm seeing no objection on this one. And anything further?
Yes, I have one more recommendation under this, that Report 24-132 be approved as the Audit Committee Annual Report to the Board for 2023 to 2024.
And on this one, is this a consent item or not?
You need an
Trustee-
alternate mover.
Sorry?
You need an alternate mover, which I am happy to
Yeah,
provide.
oh, right, we do need a different mover because I had moved that. And are you willing to be the mover? Trustee Lyra will serve as mover then as substitution. And is this a consent item? Let's just double check that. And I'm not seeing any objection to it being a consent item. And that brings us to the end of the consent items that are coming forward this evening. So I would like to open the vote for the consent items that we have, which are the two motions relating to the audit committee report. And eScribe is open, and if you can't access the eScribe, please let us know. And the two motions are carried. The Audit Committee Annual Report and the Annual Report on Internal Audit Activity. 12 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions. Thank you very much. And that's it for the Committee of the Whole report. Moving on then, I will ask Vice Chair Milburn if she could please present the report of the 3rd of December 2024 Advocacy Strategy Committee.
I will now move receipt of the December 3rd, 2024 Advocacy Strategy Committee report.
And is there a seconder for that? Trustee Presley, thank you. Are there any errors or omissions in this report? And seeing none, I'll call the question on receipt. All those in favor? And opposed? And the motion to receive is carried. And as I recall, there were no recommendations in that report.
There were no recommendations in the report.
Thank you very much. And that brings us to item 13.3 on our agenda, which is the non-consent items. That takes us back to the motion with regard to the facilities renewal program and school condition improvement project budget. And that was moved by Trustee Kaplan-Murth. So I will go to Trustee Kaplan-Murth for introduction.
No introduction required.
And that means we are looking for speakers to the motion. Trustee Bell, you have your hand up.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I am raising an issue that has been brought forth by the Lisgar School Council this evening, and I have a question for staff with regards to this motion. Recognizing and understanding that we are committed to accessibility for all, and that we're doing our best with limited resources, very limited resources, to ensure our schools are accessible to people with different abilities, disabilities, physical disabilities, and other. There's been a call out actually for quite some time from the Lisgar community to ensure that this building, the beautiful building that it's housed in, has an elevator. Currently, right now, we've had a student who had a serious accident and hasn't been able to attend school because it is not accessible to students with severe physical disabilities that don't permit them to be able to walk upstairs. The school council has reached out to our MPP, Joel Harden, to our city councillor Ariel Trostier, and have found out that the heritage regulations that we believed were in place are no longer in place. I realize that this is a very, very expensive endeavor, but I'm worried that we are losing students to a private system and to other systems because we haven't been able to make Lisgar accessible. And I understand that there's priority lists and that you track students, but I believe that it's important for us to indicate to those that live in Centertown and those that live all across Ottawa when this will be made possible. I know that the province of Ontario is committed to accessibility. Our city is committed to accessibility, and I know our board is as well. So my question for staff tonight is, when can we expect to see an elevator in Lisgar School? Thank you.
Mr. Director.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll get started and then I'll turn it over to Associate Director Giroir for a comment. Thanks, Trustee Bell, for your comments. As Manager Bradley shared, when the item was brought forward, of course, there's capital planning priorities each and every school year. We look across the sites that we have. Some, of course, are new builds that have more recent standards that are adhered to, as opposed to an older site that will take us a little more time as an organization to bring up to the new standard codes, which are always a moving target, so to speak, as new codes are put in place. When Manager Bradley addressed the question, one of the things he did, I think, reasonably suggest that is when it comes to serving the needs of our students, and I really feel for the student who's had an accident recently at that particular site at Lisgar, and of course wish the student all the best and look to make accommodations to the best of our ability, but we do try to go by the information that comes in on where our students are located to prioritize those kinds of upgrades like elevators, other accessibility pieces. So it's definitely a work in progress for our district, as it is for so many across the province. And I know that our facility staff will take that into consideration in the move forward in the priority list of things that we get done. But I'll turn it over to Associate Director Giroir, because I know some of this work is taking place. As Trustee Bell mentioned, it's not, it's significant to consider, and that we're working on that with not only accessibility, but a number of other capital upgrades.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, the only thing I would add to the director's comments is that the team did look into the impact of putting an elevator on that site at the present time, and it would be 3 classrooms out of that school as well. So it's not just the funding to do the work to put the elevator in, but it's the impact on the ability of the site to accept students as well. So there's a lot of factors that also need to be determined, but the team is looking into what's possible, but at this time, it's just not in this plan.
Thank you very much. Just quickly and follow up, when will we get a plan that outlines when this will be possible? Are we talking 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years? And that's all for me tonight. Thanks.
Through you, Chair. So again, we base our plan we do 2-year plans that we present to the board, and we base them on student enrollment and priorities at the time. So I can't at this point in time commit when you'll see that in one of our plans, but so it really depend upon a variety of factors that the team will put together when they develop the plan.
Trustee Bell, anything further?
Just to conclude, I think us as trustees have a responsibility to our constituents and our commitments to accessibility, that we should be pushing the administration to come up with a longer term plan that outlines when things will happen. And I hope that we can discuss that in the future, so that students that are considering going to Lisgar that have physical disabilities have an idea of whether or not they'll be able to attend that school or not. And I think that's the same for many of the schools in our district. Thank you very much, everyone, tonight for your work on this.
Thank you, Trustee Bell. I have Trustee Lyra next.
Thanks. Based on what I've heard, I have a couple of what I hope will be it's a very simple questions. My first question is, are we responsible to the Ontario Access for Ontarians with Disabilities Act?
Through you, Chair, that's a broad question. It depends on what you mean by that question. We don't have to retrofit all of our buildings to meet current accessibility standards. But if we do have a student that has an accessibility issue, then we do have to take appropriate action, which is what we do as a school board, which is why you see about $11 million, which is almost 10% of the plan dedicated specifically towards accessibility upgrades.
How do you reconcile what you have just said about how we have a duty to the students with accessibility needs with what we have heard from our trustee colleague about how there's a student who cannot attend school right now because of an injury that only prevents them from walking up and down stairs?
Through you, Chair, it goes back to whether or not we would have we knew we had a student who was coming to the school that had a permanent mobility issue, that we would then react to putting that into the plan to ensure that the building was accessible. But we have 147 buildings, and 80% of those buildings are 20 plus years old. So there's a variety of issues related to accessibility that we can't meet the demand to make every one of our facilities accessible to the current standards. So we have to choose and pick based on the students that we know have mobility issues that are going to be there permanently versus those that might have a temporary situation. So we do our best to react and invest in the buildings, and we do pick certain buildings and to upgrade when we can get there. But again, you see $100 million plan to upgrade our schools, and unfortunately accessibility upgrades compete with air conditioning and many other priorities of the board as well. So we can only invest what we have is the funding that we receive from the ministry, and there's several like $1 billion worth of backlog. So we have to keep all of our schools operational and healthy for our students. So, it's just balancing those needs as best as we can.
So the reason I asked my first question about the
Chair had a further comment on that.
Just to add through you, Madam Chair, thank you for Trustee Lyra on that front, is when in circumstances like this, especially when it was unexpected, something that may have happened in the course of the year once the capital plan had been established, are on-site accommodations and modifications that the site can make. And that happens in many instances when they're not, say, elevators specifically. So on-site adjustments to where courses happen to the best of the school's ability. I know our school administration do their best in that capacity, as well as virtual or e-learning or other options that we may be able to offer in unique circumstances where it was an unforeseen. So I did want to add that in, that I know our school sites also try to do their best to accommodate whatever the particular circumstance might be, especially if it's interim in nature.
So the reason I asked about the Access for Ontarians with Disabilities Act is that it has a deadline of 2025. And I started asking about it in 2018. And I was hoping that over the interim 6 years, we would have come to some kind of resolution on us meeting this deadline. And there's been a concern for a number of years about standards being set by the ministry as to what it means to meet the accessibility requirements. I'm wondering if we have finally gotten those accessibility requirements set out pen to paper.
Through you, Madam Chair, and again, I'll turn it over to our Associate Director for additional comment, but I do know for the AODA compliance, perspectives. That's been a concern for organizations as well, the senior leadership, in terms of meeting those objectives and the clarity of what those objectives are for 2025, what is to be in place and what isn't. I think Associate Director Giroir spoke to the fact that it remains a work in progress for all of us, including elements of the financial cost to do the kinds of upgrades that would ensure AODA compliance. But again, I'll turn it over to the Associate Director.
Through you, Chair. And so as we are meeting our obligations currently under the Act, there's nothing that states that we have to retrofit all of our current facilities by 2025. So all of our new builds meet the current accessibility standards, and we continue to invest in our older facilities to bring them up to speed as best we can with the resources that we have available.
So I guess my last point is I don't think it is. Okay, I have one last question. What happens if we don't meet those accessibility standards? Are we potentially liable to be sued? Are we potentially liable to be taken to the Human Rights Court? What are the potential consequences of not meeting our obligations under the Act?
Through you, Chair, I don't think we don't meet our obligations under the Act. I think we do meet our obligation under the Act. If we do find a situation where we need to make an immediate investment, that's what we actually set aside contingency funds to do that, and we do that all the time. There's a variety of ways to meet the requirements of the Act, and not necessarily do we need to install an elevator and provide access to all floors, but we do invest in making all sites wheelchair accessible. We do invest in making classrooms on main floors wheelchair accessible. We do a variety of different things. So we would take whatever situation arose and we would do our best to accommodate it within the within the limitations that we have, right? And we would develop a short, medium, and long-term plan to address it if we needed to.
I see. No further questions. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to the motion? Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you, through you, Chair.
You have wrap up, by the way. So if you speak now, this will be the end of the debate.
Oh.
So before we're at board, which means everybody gets to speak once except for the mover of the motion who speaks at the start and at the end.
Sure. So
See
if anybody else has a comment
before I
first.
go to you, just make sure nobody else wishes to speak on this. Okay, go ahead, and you've got your 5 minutes, and you will be the end.
Okay, thank you. I certainly don't need 5 minutes, but thank you, through you, Chair. So I think that the issues that have been raised tonight are important, and we've raised them at Committee of the Whole, and we've raised them at the SEAC as well, in terms of accessibility for our students. I know that today there was a Financial Accountability Office of Ontario media release that reports on Ontario school buildings. And in that report, 37.4% of schools in Ontario are below a state of good repair. And so, I think that the onus is on us to continue to advocate for increased funds in order to be able to repair particularly our older buildings, such as Lisgar and other schools in downtown and central Ottawa. And we do have that responsibility to our students who have disabilities. And of course, we can't always anticipate who is going to be a student with a disability, because sometimes those are acute rather than chronic illnesses. So we need to get those schools up to code so that they're accessible in case any student ever or staff ever needs the facilities to meet their needs. So I know that this is also something that we can deal with through our advocacy and capital funding and so on. So I would just urge us to continue to advocate and to keep track of which, by Trustee Bell raising this and by our having raised this as well at SEAC and COW, we need to keep track. We need to record how many of our students are struggling because of our facilities not being up to snuff. So with that, I will say, I don't think there's more that we need. I think we are all on the same page. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So we have the motion, if we could have it on the screen. Does anyone need it read again? And if not, then I will ask Manager Gottlieb to please open the vote. And we have a result. The motion is carried unanimously, 12 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of item 13.3. This evening, we do not have any matters on our agenda for discussion, but we do have an opportunity for a report from our OSTA representatives, and I would look to Trustee Lee, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a follow-up to discussions that were had last week. Yeah, last week at the Committee of the Whole meeting. I just wanted to update everyone that the City of Ottawa has at least postponed their cancellation of the student passes, and they will continue for at least until the next school year, at which point OSTA will be able to better address the situation.
Thank you very much. That is very good news that the city had made the decision to continue with those passes. Are there any questions for our OSTA representatives? And I'm seeing none. So that we also have here the minutes of the regular session of the OSTA Board of Directors dated the 4th of December 2024, which is provided for your information. And next we have the report from our Ontario Public School Boards Association representatives. Trustee Jenkins?
No report this evening.
No report this evening. And are there any questions for Trustee Jenkins? Just in case. And seeing none, we move on. Then you will see that the board work plan has been updated. We're still working through, there may be a slight title change. I think that title for the trustee professional development in January is a little bit of a misnomer for what is planned. So you may see that, but it will be in conjunction with how the board reacts when change is happening. And so other than that, are there any questions with regards to the work plan? And are there any matters for information or new business? New business? Trustee Kaplan-Merndt.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So I just wanted to raise publicly the issue of the OCDSB holding a panel to review whether or not a book should be allowed in our school libraries and should have been ordered for our school libraries. My concern is that in the spirit of transparency, a discussion of books in our libraries should be held publicly and should include all elected trustees, as well as the public, to be able to understand the conversation that's occurring. I think it's really important and dangerous issue in terms of books in our libraries, and that shouldn't be happening behind closed doors. And I don't think we have a proper policy around. I understand that there are policies that exist around school materials, but there is not. We do not have in our bylaws a clear policy around what a panel would look like to determine whether or not a book should exist in our school libraries.
Thank you, trustee Kaplan-Meier. With regard to the policy, I will ask staff to comment, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I can confirm that what Trustee Kaplan-Meier is referring to is not merely a discussion amongst trustees about a book. Rather, this is a formal appeal, and as such, we are bound to follow the regular rules of procedural fairness that apply to all appeals, and we're also bound by the policies and procedures applicable in this particular situation. And we intend to follow all of those policies and procedures and the typical procedural fairness principles that apply to appeals.
Mr. Director?
And through you, Madam Chair, just to add to Executive Officer Mark's comment, one of the reference points for any decision on the part of staff in terms of resources in the Ontario School Libraries Association guidelines, which help district school boards in making the kinds of decisions around resources that come up from time to time.
And I have trustee Lyra on this topic.
On this topic, yes. I'm looking to the executive officer. If you could tell us what policy specifically this flows from and when it is set to come before the policy review committee.
Through you, Chair, there's no intention to bring this policy to the policy review committee at this point. As the trustee knows, all of our policies are on a schedule to be brought at some point. I do not have that schedule with me right now, but I don't think there's any immediate intention to bring it to the policy review committee. And I don't have the name of the policy in front of me right now, but it is something to do with curriculum learning resources. There you go. I got it right. It is called Learning Resources, and it is policy 03E031.CUR. It's the only curriculum policy that we have on learning resources, and there's a procedure with the same title that outlines the appeal mechanism that we are following in this case.
So the purpose of my question was to find out when in the cyclical policy review this had intended to come. If it's not intended to come for a lengthy period of time, I'm going to raise it in conversation with the chair of policy to see if we can expedite that, because I am not thrilled with the process that we've had so far. I feel it opens us up to many people for challenging many of the books in our libraries on grounds of LGBTQ inclusion or sex ed inclusion or any number of other topics that people are consistently up in arms about the content of books on. And I really don't want our district to get bogged down in conversations about what type of books we have. I think it would be a waste of everybody's time. And so I'd like to look at this process and the policy that it flows from. Thank you.
In terms of the scale of that, perhaps it would be helpful if anybody if there are, assuming records can be found, of even knowing how many learning resources have been appealed in the last while to the initial appeal process, which is reviewed by a panel in district, not as an appeal to the trustees.
Do you want a response to that?
Is it possible?
As far as I'm aware, this is the first occasion of this review panel being of receiving a request to withdraw a publication.
Thank you very much for that. So with that, anything else under new business? And I'm not seeing any hands here. Before I adjourn the meeting, I would like to say to everyone who may be watching, every one of our students and families, all of our staff certainly, and all of our board members, that I hope you have a wonderful Christmas break. This is our last minute meeting before the break. Those who celebrate Hanukkah, I hope will have a wonderful Hanukkah. And those who are celebrating Kwanzaa will also, I hope, have a wonderful Kwanzaa celebration. I'm not sure how many more celebrations there are. I don't know necessarily all of the celebrations that will be happening over the next few weeks, but certainly I'm hoping that everyone will have a nice rest, a nice opportunity to be with family and friends, and a really lovely break from the usual routine. And with that, I declare this meeting adjourned.